the Miami Dolphins. 2021 came into the season with the expectation of 9 wins. They hit it. 9-8, 9-7
The ultimate backdoor.
Just
they
like
started at 1-7.
Red hot the second half of the season. A lot of favorable situations that were kind of outside of their control that just kind of happened to materialize.
But coming into the season, people were really, really bullish on the Dolphins. A defense that created a ton of turnovers in 2020. Right, they were power ranked, 10th in week 2 of 2021. People were really buying them for their defense.
And then, obviously sold off hard to start the season, falling, 15 spots over the next kind of 4 or 5 weeks. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 losses in a row. Probably should have been 8 losses in a row. Then got a little bit of a respite with the Texans. 1 and covered, 1 and covered, 1 and covered, 1 and covered, 1 and covered. Beat the Saints, 1 and covered, and then got demolished by the Titans. And then came home and beat the Patriots. Once again, always play the Patriots tough. A $100 better betting the Dolphins last year, made $300. Probably was down close to 1,000, probably mid-season, and came roaring back. Pythag had him at around 7.5 wins. The Pythag 2.0 model still had it around 7.5 wins, so underperforming kind of that 9 wins that they ultimately had. They had a lot of favorable positions in that second half of the year that allowed them to get those wins. Their 7-day power ranking volatility, very high, almost 5 spots per week. So the market could really never get a handle on them. Tua got hurt kind of early in the season. Brissett came in, then it was Tua, then Brissett, and then Tua. So a lot of volatility at the quarterback position. They certainly played better with Tua as he kind of closed the season out and kind of racked up a lot of those wins, except for that, again, that week 17 game versus the Titans. I don't even remember that game, but man, he played bad.
Rainy game. It was ugly. A lot of turnovers. But I think the point to highlight here is if you look at weeks 11, 12, 13, 16, they're playing a bunch of backup quarterbacks. Not just any backup quarterbacks. They're playing Mike Glennon, Ian Book, guys who were totally overmatched. But I think that really kind of helps to understand what the Miami Dolphins were last year and why, I don't know if you're seeing this. I'm seeing plenty of sentiment of the Dolphins won 9 games last year. They added Tyreek Hill. They added a bunch of pieces. That's worth a couple wins. They'll probably win 10 or 11 games. But I think this kind of paints the picture of no, this team was fundamentally probably a 6-7 win team.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is, the Pythag 2.0 model also suggests not as a 9-win team, but as a 7-win team. And then you add a couple players and maybe that gets them up another game or 2, assuming health. And then that kind of puts you in line with kind of where you are from a market expectations perspective. And that's one of the reasons why it's not really suggesting any bet. The other thing that I wanted to kind of highlight here too was as they kind of started to gather steam, the market was actually kind of quick to adapt and then really started to jump on the Dolphins and were able to capitalize. So we see even like the 7-day line change. Which monitors kind of how the line moves from the Sunday night opener all the way through the next Sunday's close. And starting from week 11 all the way through week 18, the line moved in their favor. 1 point, 1 point, 4 points, 2.5 points, 7 points, 1 point. But we also see, again, the Super Contest pick. Twice over that time period, the Dolphins were the number 1 pick and won and covered in kind of both of those. So you kind of see a very sharp sentiment shift.
People thought the Dolphins were going to be, a top 10 team, or they're power ranked as such. And they were 1-7, and people were really asking, is this kind of fluky? Is this not? And after winning a couple games, especially the Thursday night game against Baltimore, it was like, okay, this team's a little better than their record shows. Now's the time to buy when, kind of some square people might be selling the Dolphins when they're only 3-7.
The other thing I'd highlight here too is one of the things I like looking at the max lead and max deficit. Kind of gives you an indication if they lost, how competitive were they, and also the mean win probability, which kind of is a time-weighted win probability, encapsulates how competitive they were in that game as well. We can see over the first course of those games, again, 50%, 52%. They were beating the Raiders by 14 and then ended up losing. They were beating the Jags by 10 and ended up losing. They were beating the Falcons by 7 and ended up losing. not only ended up losing, but most of these games they didn't cover. You can also kind of look at the win probability time series to get a little bit more of a sense of kind of how that transpired. And you can kind of see that, they started off the games kind of relatively well, and as the game kind of wore on, it kind of broke down. All right, so let's go into the offseason. Not much to say about the draft since they basically traded away all their picks. Some of the commentary we got from Ron was they did a pretty decent job with what they had at their disposal. So linebacker was a huge need of theirs. He actually ranked it as their number one area of need, and so he liked the fact that their highest pick there at number 3, they picked Channing Tindall from Georgia. He might be able to kind of come in and really provide some depth even here in year 1. And then another thing that Ron pointed out in his reports was, again, since they only had 4 picks this year, they signed like 10 undrafted free agents. In fact, they signed an offensive tackle. He had as the 13th best offensive tackle in the draft and thinks that he could actually potentially contribute, provide some depth. When it comes to offseason changes, we kind of touched upon it. Obviously, the Tyreek Hill addition, the addition of Terran Armstead definitely is going to help kind of boost the offensive line. Added Chase Edmonds, added Sony Michel, Mostert as well. So kind of coming from that 49ers system. Lost Devontae Parker. Again, I don't think that's that big deal. I think they, kept Preston Williams, Gesicki, and obviously Waddle. And that's, a lot of people are excited about that kind of wide receiver class.
Big separators and a lot of talent for sure. Yeah. And Will Fuller didn't really play at all for them last year. Parker, not really.
Total. That was a total bust. There was a lot of people coming in last season that were very, very hyped about.
Yeah, I think
the exact same thing that always happens with him is he's injured.
He's certainly in the range of outcomes where he would contribute nothing like he did. But I think again, losses. I think Brian Flores is going to make a difference on the defensive side of the ball. And in addition is the head coach Mike McDaniel. That's a central kind of question about how the Dolphins are going to play. Is how can McDaniel kind of handle and transition from San Francisco? What elements can you bring of that offense?
And that's the thing is again, like, these are open questions. The thing is again, when we're talking about market expectations, they're being priced aggressively.
That's
with those open questions.
I really don't understand the this person was under X coach. He will therefore bring the same system to a new team, as if we don't have so many counterexamples. How many Bill Belichick coaches are we going to go through before we can finally say, okay, Bill's magic is contained within? I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the why we're still buying into the coaches being able to replicate where their coaching tree.
One addition that I also liked, obviously I lost Jacoby Brissett, but replaced him with Teddy Bridgewater, which I think is definitely a big improvement. Regardless of whether Tua struggles or not, but even if Tua gets hurt, which we know he's kind of been injury prone, has suffered from injuries, suffered from not just, kind of recovering from that devastating hip injury from a couple of years ago, but he had rib injury, kind of index finger injury kind of last year that not only caused him to miss games, but just disrupted his play as well. So to have, I think, year in and year out, we know it really is important to have a strong backup quarterback. A couple teams last few years flirted with trying to use Teddy as a starter. I don't think he's a great starter, but man, I think he's an awesome backup.
Great backup. He can really adequately fit in.
So in 2022, again, priced at 9, aggressive. Division plus 435, plus 165 to make the playoffs. Super Bowl plus 3,300. Again, Pythag 2.0 model, no bet. 14th hardest schedule, so kind of just average. They have a net benefit of 5 days of rest. Mean spread is basically flat.
The central question for me with the Jets was, I think we're going to learn a lot about Zach Wilson. And for the Dolphins is, I think it's really a kind of a new offense that has not been tried in the NFL, which is how much can receivers after the catch make a difference. And I think we'll sort of get some signal that I don't even care about the results from the first 4 games. And I'm almost expecting them to lose to the Ravens, lose to the Bills, lose to the Bengals. Maybe they'll beat the Patriots. But even if they're 1-3, if I kind of see some takeaways that this offense could work, and it might take some time. It's a new system. It's a new coach. That could be a future spot to buy.
Again, the mitigating factors to support the Tua truthers out there is, I think we all have to admit that, he's been in a very bad situation. Worst offensive lines the last few years. Coaches constantly rotating. So you look at 3 different offensive coordinators the last 3 years. And then, even this offseason, kind of still flirting with potentially signing or trading for Deshaun Watson. Kind of a broader kind of macro thesis trade here, which is to fade every team that wanted Deshaun Watson. The fact that they would leverage the brand, the reputation, the money, sentiment from fan bases, over-lever yourself in order to get someone like Deshaun Watson.
It's a desperation move. That's exactly what you're describing. Is an organization desperate for their savior. But I think even to your point about Tua, remember his rookie season, they had this kind of arbitrary start date where Ryan Fitzpatrick led the Dolphins to a 5-3 start, and they kept on taking him out of games. Right, the Tua story with the Dolphins has been rocky from the start. With that said, I think the move of Devontae Parker and trading for Tyreek Hill signals that they're going to build an offense around Tua's strengths. Tua is a very accurate quarterback. He's not going to be able to win deep in the same way that Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen can win deep. And the offensive line was dreadful last year. I'm looking at stuff perfectly blocked plays, which essentially looks at if there's one weak link on your offensive line, there's likely going to be a pressure or a sack. The Dolphins were 3.5 standard deviations worse than the mean on plays basically that were not quick outs. 3.5 standard deviations. I think the Dolphins are going to run an RPO offense, which is what they started to do in the second half of the year, where they had success, which basically mitigates the effect of unperfectly blocked plays because you're getting the ball out really, really quickly. Can you be one-dimensional like that? The offensive line is still dreadful. They're still rushing. They were 30th last year, 30th in success rate, 31st in yards per carry. They were dreadful, and that's not really going to change, I don't think, with additions of running backs.
The addition of Terran Armstead is going to help, but it's a bit of a Band-Aid, you could say. I'm going under on the Dolphins is because, again, it's baking in too much expectation, and it could go sideways. But I understand the bull argument.
Yeah, I think there's a bull argument, and I think that's why I like more of the tail end and the alternate line.